Hi, it's John here. We've got some good questions to think about today. We're thinking about the law, the 10 commandments that God gave his people way back under the ministry of the prophet Moses. Moses led God's people out of slavery in Egypt, and God brought them to Mount Sinai, to the holy mountain. And there God met with Moses, and he himself gave Moses these 10 laws, these 10 commands, these 10 ways that God's people must live. It's pretty significant, isn't it? God himself came down onto the mountain and met with Moses. But then Jesus, God himself, taught on another mountain, this time in Galilee. And he seemed to shift the way we think about those commandments. And we're going to see how he did that and why he did that. And really there's two big questions we want to answer today, I think. The first, I've got some notes. The first is, are the 10 commandments still relevant today? Have they been replaced by the ministry of Jesus or changed by the teaching of Jesus? And the second is, how do they quite work? What is sin? Because when the 10 commandments tell me that I mustn't covet, I mustn't want those things that I do not have, don't I covet every time I see an advert for a new car or a new games console or whatever it is you love? Does that mean I'm breaking God's law all the time? Does that mean I'm sinning all the time? We'll come to that. But first off, that first question. Are the 10 commandments still relevant today? Let's go through and see. So the commandments are given back in the book of Exodus, the second book in the Bible. Exodus chapter 20 lists the 10 commandments. They're repeated in the book of Deuteronomy as well. Exodus chapter 20 verse 13 is one of those commandments. Do not murder. You mustn't murder people. You mustn't kill people with no good reason. Or even if you think you got a good reason, you just should not do that. Now that is a commandment that is one that is universal across the world. Societies everywhere think that that is a wise thing to have in your law. Do not murder. But then look what Jesus does with that commandment in Matthew's Gospel. Let me read you Matthew chapter 5. This is part of that great sermon. It's sometimes called the Sermon on the Mount. Jesus was up on a mountain and he preached this sermon to a great crowd who'd come to listen to him. And in chapter 5, he says this. So this is Matthew chapter 5, verse 21. You have heard that it was said to the people long ago, you shall not murder. He's quoting that commandment that Moses gave. And anyone who murders will be subject to judgment. But I tell you, anyone who is angry with his brother or sister will be subject to judgment. Again, anyone who says to a brother or sister, Raka, is answerable to the court. And anyone who says, you fool, will be in danger of the fire of hell. Wow. Jesus says it's not just murdering someone that means God is angry with you and that you've broken God's laws. Jesus says, no, being angry with someone. I think he implies angry selfishly, not angry because this is a just thing. But anger, that means you go, you fool, and you insult someone. The kind of thing we do every day in the playground. So Jesus takes the commandment, you shall not murder, and he makes it much bigger. He says the start point of murder is to be angry with someone and to be mean towards them. He says anywhere along that road between meanness and murder is wrong, and God is angry. The reason he says that is because he sees that behind the 10 commandments there was a greater law. Someone once asked him what the greatest law of God was. It's really interesting. We see it in Matthew chapter 22. Just looking at my notes to make sure I got the right place. Matthew chapter 22, verse 34. Hearing that Jesus had silenced the Sadducees, the Pharisees got together. One of them, an expert in the law. So this is someone who knows God's Bible really well, who knows all the rules and laws and commandments, the 10 Commandments, but all the others as well. And he tested him with this question. So this man says to Jesus, "Teacher, which is the greatest commandment of the law?" It's a good question. Jesus replied, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment, and the second is like it. Love your neighbour as yourself. All the law and the prophets hang on these two commandments." Jesus is saying that at the heart of God's commandments is love. Love God, love each other. And that makes sense, because if I love someone, I'm not going to murder them. And I'm not going to be mean to them. If I am loving them, I'm going to be kind and gentle and encouraging and helpful. I'm going to be full of patience with them. Jesus is saying it's not just about not doing the wrong thing. It's about doing the right thing. If you are generous to someone because you're worried you'll get into trouble if you're not, it's not loving them. It's just fearing consequences, fearing punishment. Jesus is saying things are a whole lot harder than keeping the rules. We're meant to love each other, and we're meant to love God. Whew. And he gives that as a new commandment. It's quite interesting. John chapter 13, Jesus says this. He's just about to go to the cross to die. And he says this to his followers. John chapter 13, verse 34. "A new command I give to you, love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another." The funny thing about the new command is it's basically the same as the old command, to love your neighbour. I think what Jesus is doing is he's saying this has always been the case. It's always been about love. What I'm saying now is this: focus on loving your neighbour. Focus on loving each other. Focus on loving God. And don't worry about all the other rules, because you'll end up keeping them if you love people. So, to answer our question, does Jesus' teaching replace the 10 Commandments? Does the ministry of Jesus mean the 10 Commandments don't matter anymore? And the answer is, well, actually, it does mean they don't matter so much. They're not at the heart of Christian faith. At the heart of following Jesus is to love God like he loved God, and to love other people like he loved other people. Christians still use the 10 Commandments because they are a helpful way of showing us how to love, but they're only really a little bit of it. So if I don't murder you, if I don't steal from you, if I don't lie about you, and if I don't want all your stuff, it doesn't necessarily mean I'm loving you. I could do all those things by never talking to you and just blanking you. And that's not love, is it? It's not love. If you ignore someone, and when they come and ask to play your games, you like pretend they don't exist, and you stick your fingers in your ears and go, la, 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 you're going to get told off. A teacher or a midday supervisor is not going to like that sort of behaviour, because and you could go, but I didn't do anything wrong. I didn't hit them. I didn't shout at them. I just completely ignored them and acted like they didn't exist. And you'll be told, yes, that's what was wrong. We don't act like we don't exist. We care for each other in our school. We look out for each other. We don't ignore each other. Because love is more than just not doing bad stuff. That is where the 10 Commandments sit today. They're useful, but actually what matters far more is to love people. But that raises a second question. How do I do that? That is hard. Let's take an example of how hard it is to love people all the time. The 10 Commandments say you should not covet. To covet is to want something that someone else has. And it kind of sets you against them. It makes you jealous of them, and it cuts you off from a close friendship with them. Maybe your friend got something for Christmas that you wish you'd got. Maybe it's their birthday and they just got a Nintendo Switch, or they got a phone, or they got an iPad, or they got to go to Pleasurewood Hills in the summer, or they got to go on holiday abroad on an aeroplane to Spain. And you're thinking, oh, I wish I could go. I wish I could do that. I would love to do that. Well, how do we avoid that? Because the commandment says we shouldn't covet, but I find I'm doing it all the time. Whenever I see an advert, I want it. Whenever I hear something good that a friend's doing or has had, I want it. How do I avoid that? How do I shift so that I'm not sinning, so that I'm not coveting? And if we apply that to what Jesus was saying about loving God all the time and loving other people all the time, how do we do that? Well, I think it depends on what sin is. See, we usually use the word sin to mean really bad stuff. If someone says you're a sinner, they're saying you've done something really, really awful. And the Bible sometimes uses the word sin that way, but actually far more often it uses it to mean how we live a lot of the time. Let me read you something else from that Sermon on the Mount that Jesus taught. Matthew chapter 7. It was right at the end of that sermon. Jesus said, "Watch out for false prophets. They come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they're ferocious wolves. By their fruit you will recognize them. Do people pick grapes from a thorn bush or figs from thistles? Likewise, every good tree bears good fruit, but a bad tree bears bad fruit. A good tree cannot bear bad fruit, and a bad tree cannot bear good fruit. Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. Thus, by their fruit, you will recognize them." Jesus is saying, imagine everyone's a tree. And on a tree, you want to grow good, delicious, healthy fruit. But some trees grow bad fruit. A bit mouldy. And what we tend to do is we can say, I want to be good, so I want good fruit. So what we do is we take our bad fruit and we cut it off the tree and we glue on good fruit. You go, great, I've got good behaviour, so I'm good. And we keep having to cut off bad fruit because it keeps on growing, and stick on good fruit because it's a bit mouldy. Jesus says that's not possible. If you want good fruit, you have to be a good tree. You can't just care about what's hanging off the tree and cut off anything bad and sellotape on good stuff. No, you've got to work out what's wrong with the tree. If we want lives of love, we need to be people of love. We can't work hard at loving people. That needs to be something that is in us, that God puts in us. So, let me read you a little bit else from Jesus' teaching. Mark chapter 7, verse 21. Jesus went on, "From what comes out of a person is what defiles them, what makes them bad. For it is from within, out of a person's heart, that evil thoughts come." Jesus is saying that the evil doesn't come, it's not just the stuff we do, it's in us, it's in our hearts. And that connects with something massively important about the Ten Commandments, massively important about all the rules God gives us. He didn't give them so that we would keep them. Let me say that again. God didn't give us rules so that we would keep them. He would have liked it if we had, but he had another reason for giving them. Strange, isn't it? Let me read you the reason. It comes up across the Bible, but this is from Romans chapter 7. Romans chapter 7, verse 7. "What shall we say then? Is the law sinful? Certainly not. Nevertheless, I would not have known what sin was had it not been for the law." Paul, the writer of that book, is saying God gave us the law not so that we would be good, but to show us that we're bad. God knows that we sin. He knows that we do not love other people, and he knows that we break his rules all the time. I covet all the time. I murder all the time, according to Jesus's definition of meanness being the kind of beginning of the road down to murder. I've never killed anyone, but I have been plenty mean to plenty of people, plenty of times. I'm a sinner. I'm a sinner because my bad heart produces bad fruit. And I can't sort it out by keeping God's rules. It's good if I live God's way. It goes better for me and for the people around me. But if I want to grow good fruit, I need to be a different sort of tree. The Bible tells us that Jesus came to die for our sins. He didn't pluck our fruit off and die for it and sellotape new fruit on. He didn't pluck our fruit off and said, now you jolly well go away and grow some good fruit. Because we're still bad trees, we'll grow bad fruit. What he did was he took our hearts and he gave us new hearts. When Jesus died on the cross, he took all that is wrong and broken and wretched and messy inside of us. And he died to destroy that, to break its power over us, so that we can be free to love God and to love other people. That is a difficult idea. It's one that I'm still spending my life trying to get my head and my heart around. The idea that when Jesus died on the cross, he did it to take all the muck inside me, as well as the muck growing on me, and to kill it in his own body. When Jesus rose from the dead on Easter Sunday and walked alive out of the tomb and alive out of death, he's saying, this is your future if you put your faith in me. You will walk completely sinless, full of love for God and for others, out of your own deaths. We will live forever in love with God and with others. That's what Jesus offers us. And he starts that work now. He helps us to begin to change. I, all the time, am finding myself sinning. But I'm also finding that when I ask God, when I say, God, give me love for this person I'm with who is really winding me up, let me love them and then act in a way that is good and kind towards them. I find he does it. He helps me. I don't get it right all the time. I don't get it right most of the time. But God is there. He's in it with me. He's helping me. This is not easy stuff. These are big questions. I'm really glad you asked them. If you want to follow up, if you thought this wasn't that clear, if you thought, but that has left me with another 43 questions, then I would love you to get back to me and let me know. I hope this is helpful, and I will chat to you again soon. Bye for now.